a challenging negotiation situation.
No, it's not. It's not really a negotiation. And he's sort of a liberal guy, I guess, from what I understand. But he likes Kennedy. This was before I found this out before Kennedy came in with us. He's going to be great. Bobby's going to be great. But I like that he likes Kennedy. I do too. He's a different kind of a guy, but he's got some great things going. And I think he's going to be beyond politics. I think he could be quite influential in taking care of some situations that you probably would agree should be taken care of.
The Joe Rogan post is an example. I would love to get your psychology about behind the tweets and the post on truth. Are you sometimes being intentionally provocative, or are you just speaking your mind? And are there times where you regret some of the truths you've posted?
Yeah, I do. But not that often, honestly. I do a lot of reposting. The ones you get in trouble with are the reposts, because you find down deep they're into some group that you're not supposed to be reposting. You don't even know if those groups are good, bad, or indifferent. But the reposts are the ones that really get you in trouble. When you do your own words, it's sort of easier. But the reposts go very quickly. And if you're going to check every single little symbol, and I don't know, it's worked out pretty well for me, I tell you. Truth is very powerful, truth. And it's my platform, and it's been very powerful, very, very powerful. It goes everywhere. I call it my typewriter, that's actually my typewriter.
What are you doing usually when you're composing a truth? Like, are you chilling back on a couch?
Couches, beds.
Okay.
A lot of different things.
Like late at night, just
I'd like to do something late at night. I'm not a huge sleeper, but whenever I do them, past like 3 o'clock, they criticize you the next day. Trump was up truthing. Okay, Trump was truthing at 3 o'clock in the morning, and there should be no problem with that. And then when you think about time zones, how do they know that you're in a time zone, like an Eastern zone? So, but every time I do it after like 2 or 3 o'clock, it's like, why is he doing that? But it's gotten, the truth has become a very successful platform. And I like doing it. And it goes everywhere. As soon as I do it, it goes everywhere.
The country seems more divided than ever.
Yeah.
What can you do to help alleviate some of that division?
Well, you can get rid of these two people. They're terrible. They're terrible. You don't want to have them running this country. They're not equipped to run it. Joe, it's a disaster. Okay? And Kamala, I think she'll end up being worse than him. We'll see. I think a lot's now, the convention's over with, and I see I'm leading in just about all the polls now. They had their little honeymoon period, as they call it. And we'll see how that all goes. Who knows?
From my personal opinion, I think you are at your best when you're talking about a positive vision of the future versus criticizing the other side.
Yeah. I think you have to criticize, though. I think they're nasty. They came up with a story that I looked down and I called soldiers that died in World War I suckers and losers. Okay. Now, number one, who would say that? Number two, who would say it to military people? Nobody. It was a made-up story. It was just a made-up story. And they like to repeat it over again. They know it was made up. I have 26 witnesses that nothing was said. They don't want to hear about that. Like she lied on McDonald's. She said that she worked at McDonald's. It's not a big lie, but it's a big lie. It's so, they just went and they checked. And unless she can show something, they don't talk about, the presses are going to follow up with it, but I'll keep hammering it. But she never worked at McDonald's. It was just sort of a cool thing to say, hey, I worked at McDonald's, But one of the worst was 2 days ago, I went to Arlington at the request of people that lost their children. There'll always be children to those people. You understand that. That's not politically incorrect thing to say. The mother comes up, I lost my child. But, the child is a soldier. And lost the child because of Biden and because of Kamala. As just as though they had the gun in their hand because it was so badly handled. It should have been done at Bagram, which is the big air base. It shouldn't have been done at a small little airport right in the middle of town where people stormed it. It was a true disaster. And they asked me if I'd come and celebrate with them 3 years. 3 years. They died 3 years ago. And I said, I'm going to try. I got to know them because I brought them here, actually. One night, they almost all came here. And they said, I wonder if Trump will actually come and see us. I heard they were here. I came, so we stayed for like 4 hours listening to music up on a deck right upstairs. Beautiful. And they were great people. So they called me over the last couple of weeks and they said, we're going to have a reunion, our 3-year reunion. Would you be able to come? And it was very hard for me to do it logistically, but I said, I'll get it done. And I got there. And we had a beautiful time. I didn't run away. I didn't just walk in, shake hands, and walk out like people do. And I wasn't looking at my watch like Joe Biden does. And it was amazing. So I did it for them. I didn't do it for me. I don't need the publicity. I mean, I get more publicity probably than anybody. You would know that better than me, but I think maybe more than anybody. Maybe more than anybody that's ever lived. I don't know. But I don't think anyone could have any more. Every time you turn on television, there's like 9 different stories, all on different topics, and they're all about that. As an example, you interview a lot of people, good people, successful people. Let's see how you do with this interview versus them, okay? I mean, I can tell you right now, you're going to get the highest numbers you've ever had by sometimes a factor of 10. But when a Gold Star family asks me to come in and spend time with them. And then they said, sir, we did a ceremony, and then we went down to the graves, which was quite a distance away. They said, sir, would you come to the grave? And then they said when we were there, it's very sad actually, because these people shouldn't have died. They shouldn't have died. They died because of Biden and because of Kamala. They died because, just like if they pulled the trigger, okay? Now, I don't know if that's controversial to say, but I don't think it is. Afghanistan was the most incompetently run operation I think I've ever seen, military or otherwise. They were incompetent. But the families asked me if I'd go. I did go. Then the family said, could we have a picture at the tombstone of my son? And we did. Son or daughter. There was a daughter, too. And I took numerous pictures with the families. I don't know if anybody else was in the pictures, but they were mostly families, I guess. That was it. And then I left. I spent a lot of time with them. Then I left, and I get home that night, and I get a call that the Biden administration, with Kamala, is accusing me of using Arlington for publicity. I was in just the opposite. Just the opposite. And actually, did you see, it just came out, the families actually put out a very strong statement defending me. They said, we asked him to be there.
Well, politicians and the media can play those games. And you're right, your name gets a lot of views. You're probably legit the most famous person in the world. But on the previous thing, in the spirit of unity, you used to be a Democrat.
Yeah.
Setting the politicians aside, what do you respect most about people who lean left, who are Democrats themselves or of that persuasion, progressives, liberals, and so on?
Well, look, I respect the fact that everybody's in there. And, to a certain extent, life is what you do while you're waiting to die, so you might as well do a good job. I think in terms of what's happening now, I think, we have a chance to save the country. This country's going down. And I called it with Venezuela. I called it with a lot of different countries. And this country is going down. If we don't win this election, the election coming up on November 5th is the most important election this country's ever had. Because if we don't win it, I don't know that there'll be another election. And it's going to be a communist country, or close.
There's a lot of people listening to this, myself included, that doesn't think that Kamala is a communist.
Well, she's a Marxist.
Her father's a Marxist,
That's right.
and she's
It's a
advocating.
little unusual, you know.
She's advocating for some policies that are towards the direction of democratic socialism, let's say. But there's a lot of people that kind of know the way government works, and they say, well, none of those policies are going to actually come to reality. It's just being used during the campaign to, groceries are too expensive, we need them cheaper, so let's talk about price controls, and that's never going to come to reality.
It could come to reality. Look, I mean, she came out with price control. It's been tried like 121 different times at different places over the years, and it's never worked once. It leads to communism. It leads to socialism. It leads to having no food on the shelves. And it leads to tremendous inflation.
It's just
It's a bad idea.
whenever we use terms like communism for her, and I don't know if you know this, but some people call you a fascist.
Yeah, they do. So I figure it's all right to call them a communist. Yeah, they call me a lot worse than I call them.
They do indeed. It's just sometimes...
It's interesting, though. They'll call me something that's terrible, and then I'll hit them back. And they'll say, isn't it terrible what Trump said? I said, well, wait a minute. They just called me. So I believe you have to fight fire with fire. I believe they're very evil people. These are evil people. You know, we have an enemy from the outside, and we have an enemy from within. And in my opinion, the enemy from within are radical left lunatics. And I think you have to fight back.
Whenever there's a lot of fighting fire with fire, it's too easy to forget that there's a middle of America that is that's moderate and kind of sees the good in both sides and just likes one side more than the other in terms of policies. Like I said, there's a lot of people that like your policies, that like your skill in being able to negotiate and end wars, and they don't see the impending destruction of America.
You know, we had no wars when I was president. That's a big thing. Not since 78 years has that happened. But we had no wars when I was president. We defeated ISIS, but that was a war that was started that we weren't anywhere near defeating. But think of it, I had no wars. And Viktor Orban, the prime minister of Hungary, said the world has to have Trump back because everybody was afraid of Trump. Now, that's what he said. So I'm not using that term, but I think they respected me. But he said China was afraid, Russia was afraid, everybody was afraid. And I don't care what word they use. Probably that's even a better word if you want to know the truth. But let's use the word respect. They had respect for me. They had respect for the country. I mean, I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, the Russian pipeline. Nobody else could have done that. I ended it. It was done. Then Biden comes in and he approved it. So we're defending Germany and these other countries for peanuts compared to what it's worth. And they're paying the person we're defending them against billions and billions of dollars for energy. I said, how does that work? And we had it out with them, and it worked out good, and they paid hundreds of billions of dollars. Well, you wouldn't even have a NATO right now. You wouldn't have NATO if it wasn't for me.
As the leader of the United States, you were the most powerful man in the world. As you mentioned, not only the most famous, but the most powerful. And if you become leader again, you will have unprecedented power. Just on your own personal psychology, what does that power do to you? Is there any threat of it corrupting how you see the world?
No, I don't think so. Look, I've been there for 4 years. I could have done a big number on Hillary Clinton. I thought it looked terrible to take the president's wife and put her in prison. She's so lucky I didn't do anything. She's so lucky. Hillary is a lucky woman because I had a lot of people pushing me to. They wanted to see something, but I could have done something very bad. I thought it looked so bad. Think of it. You have the President of the United States, and you also had Secretary of State, right? She was. But you're going to put the President's wife in prison? And yet when I got out, they have all these hoaxes. They're all hoaxes. But they have all these dishonest hoaxes, just like they did in the past with Russia. That was a hoax. The 51 different, agencies or agents, that was a hoax. The whole thing was a hoax. There was so many hoaxes and scams. But I didn't want to put her in jail. And I didn't. And I explained it to people. You know, they say, lock her up, lock her up. It doesn't. We won. I said, we don't want to put her in jail. We want to bring the country together. I want to bring the country together. You don't bring the country together by putting her in jail. But then when I got out, you know, they went to work on me. It's amazing. And they suffer from massive Trump derangement syndrome, TDS. And I don't know if it's curable from their standpoint.
A lot of people are very interested in footage of UFOs. The Pentagon has released a few videos, and there's been anecdotal reports from fighter pilots. So a lot of people want to know, will you help push the Pentagon to release more footage, which a lot of people claim is available?
Oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I would do that. I'd love to do that. I have to do that. But they also are pushing me on Kennedy. And I did release a lot, but I had people come to me and beg me not to do it. But I'll be doing that very early on. But I would do that.
There's a moment where you had some hesitation about Epstein, releasing some of the documents on Epstein. Why the hesitation?
I don't think I'm not involved. I never went to his island, fortunately. But a lot of people did.
Why do you think so many smart, powerful people allowed him to get so close?
He was a good salesman. He was, was a hale and hearty type of guy. He had some nice assets that he'd throw around, like islands. But a lot of big people went to that island. But fortunately, I was not one of them.
It's just very strange for a lot of people that the list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be, by the way. Probably.
So if you're able to, you'll be...
Yeah, I'd certainly take a look at it. Now, Kennedy's interesting because it's so many years ago. You know, they do that for danger, too, because, endangers certain people, et cetera, et cetera. So Kennedy is very different from the Epstein thing. But, yeah, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein. I'd have no problem with it.
That's great to hear. What gives you strength when you're getting attacked? You're one of the most attacked people in the world.
I think you can't care that much. I know people that care so much about everything, like what people are saying. You can't care too much because you end up choking.
One of the tragic things about life is that it ends. How often do you think about your death? Are you afraid of it?
I have a friend who's very, very successful, and he's in his 80s, mid-80s, and he asked me that exact same question. I turned it around. I said, well, what about you? He said, I think about it every minute of every day. And then a week later, he called me to tell me something, and he starts off the conversation by going, tick, tock, tick, tock.
Yeah.
This is a dark person, in a sense, but it is what it is. I mean, if you're religious, you have, I think, a better feeling toward it. You're supposed to go to heaven, ideally not hell, but you're supposed to go to heaven if you're good. I think our country's missing a lot of religion. I think it really was a much better place with religion. It was almost a guide, to a certain extent it was a guide. You want to be good to people. Without religion, there are no guardrails. I'd love to see us get back to religion, more religion in this country.
Well, Mr. President, thank you for putting yourself out there, and thank you for talking today.
Look, I love the country. I want to see the country be great, and we have a real chance of doing it, but it's our last chance, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this conversation with Donald Trump. To support this podcast, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, as I've started doing here at the end of some episodes, let me make a few comments and answer a few questions. If you would like to submit questions, including in audio and video form, go to lexfriedman.com/AMA or get in touch with me for whatever other reason at lexfriedman.com/contact. I usually do this in a t-shirt, but I figured for this episode I'll keep my suit and tie on. So first, this might be a good moment to look back a bit. I've been doing this podcast for over 6 years, and I first and foremost have to say thank you. I'm truly grateful for the support and the love I've gotten along the way. It's been, I would say, the most unlikely journey, and on most days, I barely feel like I know what I'm doing. But I wanted to talk a bit about how I approach these conversations. Now, each conversation is its own unique puzzle, so I can't speak generally to how I approach these. But here, it may be useful to describe how I approach conversations with world leaders, of which I hope to have many more and do a better job every time. I read a lot of history, and I admire the historian perspective. As an example, I admire William Shirer, the author of many books on Hitler, including The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. He was there and lived through it and covered it objectively to the degree that one could. Academic historians, by the way, criticize him for being a poor historian because he editorialized a little too much. I think those same folks criticize Dan Carlin and his Hardcore History podcast. I respect their criticism, but I fundamentally disagree. So, in these conversations with world leaders, I try to put on my historian hat. I think in the realm of truth and public discourse, there's a spectrum between the ephemeral and the eternal. The outrage mob and clickbait journalists are often focused on the ephemeral, the current thing, the current viral shitstorm of mockery and derision. But when the battle of the day is done, most of it will be forgotten. A few true ideas will remain, and those the historian hopes to capture. Now, this is much easier said than done. It's not just about having the right ideals and the integrity to stick by them. It's not even just about having the actual skill of talking, which I still think I suck at. But let's say it's a work in progress. You also have to make the scheduling work and set up the entirety of the environment in a way that is conducive to such a conversation. This is hard, really hard, with political and business leaders. They are usually super busy, and in some cases super nervous because, well, they've been screwed over so many times with clickbait, gotcha journalism. So to convince them and their team to talk for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours is hard. And I do think a good conversation requires that kind of duration. And I've been thinking a lot about why. I don't think it's just about needing the actual time of 3 hours to cover all the content. I think the longer form with a hypothetical skilled conversationalist relaxes things and allows people to go on tangents and to banter about the details, because I think it's in the details that the beautiful complexity of the person is brought to light. Anyway, I look forward to talking to more world leaders and doing a better job every time, as I said. I would love to do interviews with Kamala Harris and some other political figures on the left and right, including Tim Walz, AOC, Bernie, Barack Obama, Bill and Hillary, and on the right, J.D. Vance, Vivek, George W., and so on. And on the topic of politics, let me say as an immigrant, I love this country, the United States of America. I do believe it is the greatest nation on earth. And I'm grateful for the people on the left and the right who step into the arena of politics. They fight for this country that I do believe they all love as well. I have reached out to Kamala Harris, but not many of the others. I probably should do a better job of that. But I've been doing most of this myself, all the reach out, scheduling, research, prep, recording, and so on. And on top of that, I very much have been suffering from imposter syndrome, with the voice in my head constantly pointing out when I'm doing a shitty job. Plus, a few folks graciously remind me on the internet the very same sentiment of this aforementioned voice. All of this, while I have the option of just hiding away at MIT, programming robots and doing some cool AI research with a few grad students, or maybe joining an AI company, or maybe starting my own. All these options make me truly happy. But like I said, on most days, I barely know what I'm doing, so who knows what the future holds. Most importantly, I'm forever grateful for all of you, for your patience and your support throughout this roller coaster of a life I've been on. I love you all. Okay, now let me go on to some of the questions that people had. I was asked by a few people to comment on Pavel Durov arrest and on X being banned in Brazil. Let me first briefly comment on the Durov arrest. So, basic facts. Pavel Durov is CEO of Telegram, which is a messenger app that has end-to-end encryption mode. It's not on by default, and most people don't use the end-to-end encryption, but some do. Pavel was arrested in France on a long list of charges related to quote-unquote criminal activity carried out on the Telegram platform and for quote-unquote providing unlicensed cryptology services. I think Telegram is indeed used for criminal activity by a small minority of its users. For example, by terrorist groups to communicate. And I think we all agree that terrorism is bad. But here's the problem. As the old saying goes, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And there are many cases in which the world unilaterally agrees who the terrorists are. But there are other cases when governments, especially authoritarian inclined governments, tend to propagandize and just call whoever's in the opposition, whoever opposes them, terrorists. There is some room for nuance here. But to me, at this time, it seems to obviously be a power grab by government wanting to have backdoor access into every platform so they can have censorship power against the opposition. I think generally, government should stay out of censoring or even pressuring social media platforms. And I think arresting a CEO of a tech company for the things said on the platform he built is just nuts. It has a chilling effect on him, on people working at Telegram, and on people working at every social media company, and also people thinking of launching a new social media company. Same is the case of X being banned in Brazil. It's, I think, a power grab by Alexandre de Moraes, a Supreme Court justice in Brazil. He ordered X to block certain accounts that are spreading quote-unquote misinformation. Elon and X denied the request. Then de Moraes threatened to arrest X representatives in Brazil, and in response to that, X pulled the representatives out of Brazil, obviously, to protect them. And now, X, having no representatives in Brazil, apparently violates the law. Based on this, de Moraes banned X in Brazil. Once again, it's an authoritarian figure seeking censorship power over the channels of communication. I understand that this is complicated, because there are evil people in the world, and part of the role of government is to protect us from those evil people. But, as Benjamin Franklin said, those who can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. So it's a trade-off. But I think in many places in the world, many governments have leaned too far away at this time from liberty. Okay, next up, I got a question on AI, which I emotionally connected with. I'll condense it as follows. Hello, Lex. I'm a programmer, and I have a deep fear of slipping into irrelevance because I am worried that AI will soon exceed my programming skills. Let me first say that I relate to your fear. It's scary to have a thing that gives you a career and gives you meaning to be taken away. For me, programming is a passion, and if not for this podcast, it would probably, at least in part, be my profession. So I get an uncomfortable feeling every time Claude, the LLM I use for coding at this time, just writes a lot of excellent, approximately correct code. I think you can make a good case that it already exceeds the skill of many programmers, at least in the same way that the collective intelligence of Stack Overflow exceeds the skill of many programmers, many individual programmers, but in many ways it still does not. But I think eventually, more and more, the task, the profession of programming will be one of writing natural language prompts. I think the right thing to do, and what I'm at least doing, is to ride the wave of the ever-improving code-generating LLMs and keep transforming myself into a big-picture designer versus low-level tinkerer. What I'm doing and what I recommend you do is continually switch to whatever state-of-the-art tool is for generating code. So for me currently, I recently switched from VS Code to Cursor, and before that it was Emacs to VS Code switch. So Cursor is this editor that's based on VS Code that leans heavily on LLMs and integrates the code generation really nicely into the editing process. So it makes it super easy to continually use the LLMs. So what I would advise and what I'm trying to do myself is to learn how to use it and to master its code generation capabilities. I personally try to now allocate a significant amount of time to designing with natural language first versus writing code from scratch. So using my understanding of programming to edit the code that's generated by the LLM versus sort of writing it from scratch and then using the LLM to generate small parts of the code. I see it as a skill that I should develop in parallel to my programming skill. I think this applies to many other careers too. Don't compete with AI for your job. Learn to use the AI to do that job better. But yes, it is scary on some deep sort of human level, the threat of being replaced. But at least I think we'll be okay. All right, next up, I got a very nice audio message and question from a gentleman who is 27 and feeling a lot of anxiety about the future. Just recently, he graduated with a bachelor's degree and he's thinking about going to grad school for biomedical engineering. But there is a lot of anxiety. He mentioned anxiety many times in the message. It took him an extra while to get his degree, so he mentioned he would be 32 by the time he's done with his PhD. So it's a big investment. But he said in his heart, he feels like he's a scientist. I think that's the most important part of his message, of your message. By the way, I'll figure out how to best include audio and video messages in future episodes. Now, on to the question. Well, thank you for telling me your story and for submitting the question. My own life story is similar to yours. I went to Drexel University for my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees. And I took a while, just as you're doing. I did a lot of non-standard things that weren't any good for some hypothetical career I'm supposed to have. I trained and competed in judo and jiu-jitsu for my entire 20s. Got a black belt from it. I wrote a lot, including a lot of really crappy poetry. I read a large amount of non-technical books, history, philosophy, and literature. I took courses on literature and philosophy that weren't at all required for my computer science and electrical engineering degrees, like a course on James Joyce. I played guitar in bars around town. I took a lot of technical classes, many, for example, on theoretical computer science, that were way more than were needed for the degree. I did a lot of research and I coded up a bunch of projects that didn't directly contribute to my dissertation. It was pure curiosity and the joy of exploring. So, like you, I took the long way home, as they say, and I regret none of it. Throughout that, people around me and even people who loved me wanted me to hurry up and to focus, especially because I had very little money, and so I had a sense like time was running out for me to take the needed steps towards a reasonable career. And just like you, I was filled with anxiety, and I still am filled with anxiety to this day. But I think the right thing to do is not to run away from the anxiety, but to lean into it and channel it into pursuing with everything you got the things you're passionate about. As you said, very importantly, in your heart, you know you're a scientist. So that's it. You know exactly what to do. Pursue the desire to be a scientist with everything you got. Get to a good grad school, find a good advisor, and do epic shit with them. And it may turn out in the end that your life will have unexpected chapters. But as long as you're chasing dreams and goals with absolute, unwavering dedication, good stuff will come of it. And also, try your best to be a good person. This might be a good place to read the words "If" by Rudyard Kipling that I often return to when I feel lost and I'm looking for guidance on how to be a better man. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you and make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart, nerve, and sinew to serve your turn long after they're gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings and lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.
I have new tour dates to tell you about. I'll be in New Orleans, Louisiana. We're coming back over there. We're going to do it at the Sanger Theater down there, downtown, March 29th and 30th. That's Easter weekend. Get your tickets early with the pre-sale code RATKING starting this Wednesday, January 17th at 10 a.m. local time. General on sale begins Friday, January 19th at 10 a.m. local time. We also have tickets remaining in Charlottesville, State College, Amherst, Brisbane, Sydney, in the Australia, and Atlanta, Georgia. Get all your tickets at theovon.com/TOUR. We are down here in Austin, Texas today over at Rooster Teeth Studios, and we are happy to be here and really happy to let you know about today's guest. He's one of the brightest young comedians in the world. He is just a just a long just ivory flamingo of a boy. And he is just so humorous. And you know him from Matt and Shane's Secret podcast and his latest special, Beautiful Dogs, on Netflix. I'm grateful to get to spend time today with my friend, Mr. Shane Gillis.
Tell you my stories. Shine on me, and I will find a song. I will sing it. I'm gonna stay.
I don't know. I'm really not.
It's a podcast. Who gives a fuck? We can sit here and say nothing. People will be like, unbelievable. The two comedic geniuses of our time have done it again.
Legend.
They're gonna be like, yo, how do you jack off? How do you poop? People are like, holy fuck. I'm not worried about it.
Legend. Dude, how weird is it when people start saying you're a legend and you're like, I just ate a Wendy's burger in the family restroom by myself.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like, I'm depressed. Yeah.
That's always weird, I think. Because that's probably started to happen to you. People are like, dude, this guy's the king, right?
It's something, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
A lot of, I've heard stuff like that. Off-road Elvis, people call you that.
Late Elvis, Vegas Elvis.
Yeah.
That sweaty, dying Elvis.
Yeah.
That actually fires me up. I'll take that.
Yeah, people say, you'd be like the baddest dyke in the world. People say, I've heard that.